Today we're here at Digital Origin with Stephen and Dan. My name's Costa. I'm one of the cybersecurity consultants at Enable, and we're here to talk about cyber and business resiliency across small businesses and small enterprises. So let's talk about gaps in some of these security tools that we see in these SME businesses.
I think for me a big gap is not necessarily the technology, as we kind of briefly mentioned, it's about the process as well. How are you then, as the business, interpreting what matters most? We talk about critical workloads, sensitive data, those kind of things. How is that related to the incidents that we're seeing in the alerting? And I think that is a business process problem and challenge as much as a technology one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's often the outcome conversation that we need to be having with businesses here. What did you buy a piece of technology for? You often know why you've bought it from a business perspective. But if you've bought a piece of security tooling and you don't know what the outcome of that is day to day, it might provide static protection. But to the point we've made a few times now, if there is not an ongoing monitoring of that, tweaking of that for the outcomes of that business, an alert that might mean something to one business may mean absolutely nothing to the other. So being able to assess that outcome is massively important. Stephen, from your perspective, do your clients generally have the right tools in place already, or is it something that they still need to continue to invest in?
For those who have come through the journey with us, yes, they've had products in the right places to do the right piece, and they're using a third party like us to monitor alerts and things like that. So people we see are coming to us. Quite often, they've made some good decisions in what they're looking to buy or they're using to monitor. What they're not doing that well with is then the ongoing monitoring of it. What do I do if I find a problem? How do I remediate that? How big a problem is it in my business? That's where we see a real downfall of that. But I think the SaaS-based softwares that are out there are becoming more akin to SMB businesses and understanding their needs as well. It's just good for some signposting along the way.
Absolutely. And is there a problem connecting the dots between those technology points, do you think?
There's definitely a problem. There's definitely a piece where you could just keep buying more and more softwares and putting them on top of each other, and they may be doing the same job as each other. They may interfere with each other. That's where you get to a point where if you're just the end user client, a little bit of knowledge becomes dangerous in that you either hyper scare a situation because you're getting lots of readings from different pieces of software all at the one time, or because you've bought all those overlays and effectively generated a lot of costs with that, you think you're doing everything right when actually you could be leaving one door open. We see that in a number of cases where we have problems, things like MFA on global admins are not correctly administered. That's the kind of thing which will be overlooked in certain tools. It'll be overlooked by certain people who are managing them as well because they think they're the admin on it, it's okay, they've done all the rest for the rest of the estate, and actually they are the ones that leave the door open. So connecting the dots is hard. We have a viewpoint inside Digital Origin where we quite like people to step away from what they're using currently and then use what we think or we've decided is the best journey for them. That allows us to support them better because our whole desk understands what the tools are doing and how they're done and how they're set up. But often there's a cost implication of that, of removing softwares that already exist in infrastructures.
And to your point actually around even the likes of MFA, we really need to drill home the point here that endpoint, although still a massive part of that piece of the puzzle, it's bypassed 50% of the time these days. And actually where we start looking at the SaaS applications being breached and being monitored, yeah, it's absolutely great to be able to put those back into the picture, make sure they're being monitored and configured correctly. What I thought was quite interesting and something worth sharing with our audience here is that over the last year, as people have naturally started coming back to the office a little bit more, we're seeing that perimeter layer that was almost ignored at the offices, your firewalls, etc. They've actually started to see an uptick in where threats have been coming from. So where we almost started to ignore the firewall because we thought, well, actually, it doesn't hold the keys to my kingdom anymore. Now we're seeing, I think something like 18% of the threats that we're seeing come through originate from network perimeters, whereas actually in years prior, it was going down. So it comes back to the point, right? They need visibility and monitoring constantly over the environment. But if they're so used to looking at a threat vector from one certain application, they're not going to have the context of what the rest of the world is seeing. So having somebody like yourselves in place, having an MDR solution in place where it gets the context of all of those telemetry signals is key.
I think there's another nervousness that people have got to be aware of on the horizon as well, is that the world shouts about AI and automation so much. I'm yet to see how much people are really making sure the security of that AI and the automation is in place as well. If you have an agent and you're using it for something, it's typically got a lot of access into pieces of data. Is that correctly secured as well? I think is the next piece of the journey that people really need to think about.
Absolutely. AI agents talking to AI agents to share telemetry, to automate things. I bring it back to the identity conversation. When you are looking at identity, that is the single easiest thing to breach to get access to multiple parts of an organization. AI is, of course, a massive part of that. If you are running AI agents within your Office 365 environment, and that is how you log into them, just compromising that means you've got access to somebody's AI environment, which absolutely makes it a risk from a security perspective and needs to be monitored. We've talked about AI being used for the bad. And actually one of those things is the social engineering side. So from your perspective, what do you see that the adversaries using AI there?
Yeah, I think certainly from a phishing perspective, the AI is obviously able to contextualize very quickly about an organization. It can be used in a way to even spear phishing, to mimic certain individuals, their behaviors, their patterns, their language in the emails. So I think that is certainly a big risk. Certainly.
Compromised credentials ultimately end up as the fastest path into an organization's data. So, of course, using AI to get access to that, to build the patterns, naturally makes a lot of sense. So maybe just flip that conversation slightly. We often look at AI during these conversations as the bad thing. But it's probably a good way to look at it and stop and see how Enable are using it in our SOC, for example. So where we see telemetry points coming in, if we were to still be reliant on human investigations and analytics there, we'd be behind the trail. To your point, AI scales massively in terms of its speed and contextual context that it can build there. For us, we're now leveraging AI to do 90% of the detection logic. So it frees up the humans to be actually now threat hunters, true investigators, rather than dealing with the noise that comes through. And actually, to the point of having the right tools in place, having the right correlation in place, you see something about 900,000 alerts that we contextualized last year. 650,000 of those were brought together naturally from different telemetry sources. They weren't just endpoint, they weren't just identity. They were automatically correlated by the AI and the large language models for part of that detection logic, freeing up the humans to provide those targeted response actions when required.
And that's hugely why we made the decision back in the middle of last year to kind of move down that AdLum and MDR route. Is that the same for us, really? It was doing the heavy lifting in the background. It took out the false positive or noise around it. It allowed us to really focus on what we were looking at and what we were monitoring for, and then allowed our team to then go and help with the remedials should it be necessary.
And to the point about noise, we saw something like 2 alerts per minute. How does a team of human analysts deal with that in a massive SOC, in a very well-established SOC, let alone in these small organizations where they don't have somebody dedicated to security? So I think we've very quickly established having the right security tools in place is one thing, but it doesn't prevent a breach. Ultimately, what we need is a combination of the managed detection and response capabilities that a security operations center offers, 24/7 coverage, but we really need to lean into modern technology to A, use AI to correlate those alerts and those telemetry points, and B, use a SOAR, security orchestration response platform, to make sure that those response actions are as quickly handled as they are detected.